Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, where we talk with martial arts practitioners about their histories and the influence that their practice of martial arts has on their lives. You are listening to the free version of this podcast, which is abbreviated. Help support this program by considering to subscribe to us on Patreon, where you will get 4 full-length podcasts each month, 1 week before the YouTube release date. The cost is that of about 1 coffee shop coffee per month. Go to www.patreon.com/malmag to subscribe. That is www.patreon.com/malmag. If you would like to purchase single full-length episodes of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, visit our Gumroad page at malmag.gumroad.com, and that is malmag.gumroad.com. This week I get on Zoom with Conklin from Vancouver, Canada. She talks to us about her history and about academics and martial arts. Sit back and enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. And I've got a little change up for you today, and this is intentional on my part, and I wish I would have intended that earlier, which is to get some female voices in here. And, the martial arts, oddly, it seems like publicly more of a male-dominated world. But when you get into practice, one of the things that I've noticed, at least since the 1980s, early 1980s when I started, is we now have probably at least 50% women, I think. And so I'd like to welcome a dear old friend of mine, Annie Conklin. And this is, I think you might be the start of my little Canadian wing here. I think I actually interviewed Marvin before you, so you might be number 2 in the line of Canadians that are going to be on here.
That's great. Thanks for having me, Tim. Really excited.
You're welcome. So Annie, I know through the Inosanto family of martial arts, and you're from Vancouver.
I'm here now in Vancouver.
Okay, yeah,
Tim,
Annie was one of these fun people. That the confusion was because Guru always saw you all these other places, and we didn't know if you were English Annie, Canadian Annie from wherever. But I just said, well, she's got a little bit of an accent, so I think she's Canadian Annie somewhere. Anyway,
definitely Canadian Annie. I'm originally from Ontario, so I'll probably go through some of that with my history at some point, but I revisited and reconnected with Guru when I was actually living in the United Kingdom, and I first saw Guru again in Edinburgh with Rick Young. So, and I had red hair at the time. So for a long time, Guru thought I was Scottish. Yes. Okay. And I did have a wee accent for a little while too, because I'd lived there for long enough. But I've repatriated now. Yes.
That's hilarious. And then the other thing that's interesting to me is you are a very high level scholastically. You are like a researcher, I believe, right? So you're like a PhD researcher kind of person.
That's right, Tim. Yeah, I have a PhD, a doctorate, and then after that, I did what's called a postdoctoral fellowship, which is where you kind of you still do more training, but you're sort of more independent. It's sort of what you do before you become a faculty member. Oh. And that's what brought me back to UCLA or ULA. So I had a wonderful chance to officially be a student at the academy, which was when
we had the triple Ann threat. I remember we had 3 girls in class named Anne, Annie, which was a lot of fun.
I know, and I never quite knew if Guru was calling me up or not.
And he just pull all 3 of you up at the same time, whatever.
I know.
Get up here.
That's right. And so now I'm a faculty member. And in fact, I've just put in my tenure package in the summer. So hopefully I will get promoted to what's called an associate professor.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That means job security.
It certainly does. Yes. After a long journey, Tim, a long journey.
Oh, yeah. That's not stuff to sneeze at for sure. That takes a little work to get there.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in martial arts.
Yeah, well, I started when I was 8 years old. It was 1988, and I was in a small town in southwestern Ontario, and there was a karate dojo that opened up. And my mom took me there, and we had a look at the class, and they were very welcoming and very friendly. And I thought I'd give it a go. And I guess I stuck with it. When you're young and you kind of go through the belts, your goal is to get that infamous black belt, right? So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
that motivation to do that. And I mostly did the katas, and we always had to learn a bit of history for each of our kind of testing levels and stuff. And I didn't really like the sparring. I really avoided the sparring in my early days. And
Didn't like to get punched?
no, I didn't, Tim. I really didn't. And I do remember for my just before my black belt, my brown belt test, for some reason that day, it seemed like everyone who belonged to the dojo decided to show up, and I had to fight everyone.
They probably called him. Said,
What's
get in.
I know. Well, I don't know. I feel like it was a secret message, a memo that went out to everyone by the teacher. And I thought afterwards, hang on a minute, why did I have to go through everyone? And I know other people for their test didn't. It was just sort of whoever showed up. You had to fight whoever was there. And so lucky
That's when you
me.
got to pass out like the X-Lax laced cookies or something, the night before.
Oh, if I had only known. If I'd only known. But so when Guru talks about stamina, holy tamale, yeah, that was a real test of my stamina. So I got through it, and I got that brown belt, and but unfortunately we moved from the little Kingsville town that I was in to Toronto.
So can I ask a question real quick? Because I kind of brought this up. So the 80s, I mean, I'm a little older than you. So the 80s were a bit of my heyday as far as like basically middle school, or actually sixth grade through high school was the 80s for me. And I did start martial arts in 1982.
Okay.
Kind of talking about the makeup of gender. Like I know, the place I was at was a place that trained professional kickboxers at the time. And then we had Shorin-ryu karate, and then we had a kung fu system being taught there, and there was a taekwondo guy and a Shorin Jikembo guy. And of all these classes, there was a good lot of people, and I can remember about 4 or 5 women. Now they were tough, but there was only about 4 or 5. What other girls were there than you when you were in this karate school?
Yeah, there was me and one other brown belt.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yeah, so I actually what I did
then for your brown belt.
Yeah, so what I did was Ishinryu karate, so it was a combination of Shoin-ryu and Gojin-ryu, I think. Yeah, so it was like 50-50 punching and kicking. It was a balance. And yeah, when I started as a white belt, there was only one other girl, and I guess she's the person I suppose I looked up to her. I saw that she was doing it, and she was very close to black. And I think, when I left, I think there might have only been one other girl since. So, I was one of 2, and sometimes I was the only girl in most of my classes, because she didn't always come. She was at that point, I think she was in high school or something, right? So so I'm used to being the only girl pretty much in the majority of my classes. And I would say that it's been like that for the good majority of my training until I came to the academy. And I think actually I find that that's something really special about the academy and about Guru. He really I think he attracts a gender balance.
Yeah.
And there's something about him as a teacher and the environment that he creates as a teacher,
right,
that makes it safe for women to come and to feel comfortable.
Yeah, and he's created a lot of really excellent female instructors that many of us look up to, and you don't even really think, oh, I'm this is a female instructor, I'm having this great respect for him. You just do, because it is what it is. It's the sort of the makeup of how we go about martial arts and hierarchy. But some of these ladies are just phenomenal. They're very good. And even kids class I marvel at is most of the times 50% girls. And there are times when, I see it come in and I'm looking at the kids class and I'm like, okay, like my Saturday class, I've had it where there's 3 boys and like 10 girls. And I said, oh,
Yay.
these boys are in trouble today, but it's never
That-
like, no one ever picks on anybody, but
Oh,
it's
that
still,
makes me happy to
yeah,
hear that, Tim. I'm always trying to promote more girls and women in martial arts, and and there's been a change. I think even just generally, like even now, a BJJ class will have several women in it.
right.
It's more mainstreamed now. I think it depends on the type of art as well to some degree,
Sure.
but much more improvement for sure compared to like the N of 2
Right.
back in the 80s and 90s.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, we'll definitely chat about that a little bit more. So after your small town Ishinru school, where did you go to then?
So we moved to Toronto, and I wasn't able to really find the same Ishinru karate style. So what was close to me at the time was actually, believe it or not, was Taekwondo. So I ended up shifting to Korean martial art. I did get a black belt in that, and that took me about maybe 3.5 years of training about 3 or 4 times a week. And I guess I was lucky that the instructor was able to kind of just, I guess, recognize that I had come with some skills. So I think he sort of, he was more willing to sort of help me fast track a little bit. And I don't think I completely started from zero, but he wasn't able to just give me a brown belt in Taekwondo, right? I mean, it wasn't like that.
It's such a nice change, or well, reminiscing about that, because now like you'll have people kind of walk in and say, well, I'm this, can I get equivalent in that? And I'm like, what? What makes you think that? It's like you might be a fantastic veterinarian, but I'm not going to license you as a dentist.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I know. But I guess he was willing to, let me go faster than maybe he would have otherwise. Cause, I had the skills, I had coordination, I was able to pick things up and everything, but he still made me go through the levels, in his system. And then, the funny thing is, and I still wonder what happened. Literally, I did my test on a Friday, and then I go on the Monday, and the doors are chained. There's no sign of Mr. Kim's Taekwondo school. And I told my mom, I was like, am I dreaming? Like, did I dream that I had a black belt and then I did training for 3 years? Like, what happened? And it just gone, just no trace, gone. And I have no idea. I don't know what happened.
Did you know any of the other students personally? No one knows where
No, not really. I have to say, Tim, most of my martial arts, my early days of my martial arts were pretty solitary. Like I didn't really have that sense of community that I do now. And maybe it was because I sort of did move around. I was somewhere for like 2 years and somewhere for 3 years and then 2 years. And, and I was pretty young, right? So, most of the students, to be honest, were often in their teens and early adults, right? So then my mom found an American kickboxing school for me, because obviously, Taekwondo is very kicking heavy, and I guess kickboxing similar. So I did that. But they were very, competition oriented. And again, I was still didn't like the sparring. So I just did the classes, and I did that for I think 2 years, but I don't think there was really any belts and stuff. So I was sort of just in between. And then after that, I did Nimpo Taijutsu. So I ended up taking up ninjutsu, and I did that for about 5 years.
Wow.
And so that was more consistent a little bit. And through that teacher, was actually really interested in learning Bruce Lee's martial art. And I have to say, I didn't really know who Bruce Lee was. I know this is going to sound a shock to your audience, but unlike a lot of my colleagues, I didn't really read martial arts magazines. I didn't really follow all of the trends or seek things out. I just started it because, my dad wanted me to do something physical for my physical health. And he liked the idea that I was going to learn some self-defense in the process, because as a girl, he was my dad, and he thought that was probably a good skill to have. And so I just did it for those reasons. I was so ignorant of all of it, really. And I'm in awe of all of you guys who just know so much history and remember all the magazines and everything.
That's just being a nerd on it. That's all.
Yeah, just nerding out. I feel like, gosh, I'm a nerd in real life, but I can't nerd out in my martial arts passion. So anyway, but so through that person, he and I did private lessons for 2 years with Makoto Kabayama. And I don't know if you know that name, Tim. You might do, because he was Larry Hartzell's senior instructor in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he kind of, I guess he was the key representative of the Larry Hartzell lineage of JKD concepts, and through him was introduced to both JKD and FMA. And then the rest is history, with my love of FMA and all things guru.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who did you pick that? So your teacher, the ninjutsu teacher, was your first JKD teacher then?
No, we did private lessons together. So we learned
with
JKD together
from
Makoto. So I would say Makoto was my first JKD instructor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and he's also trained by Paul Vunak. So I knew about Paul Vunak before I really knew about Guro Inasano.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting days back in those periods where you had there was a lot of branches on the tree, that kind of all lead back to Guru, then to the roots of Bruce Lee, right? But yeah, there's a lot of very interesting branches that still exist, kind of, I guess, with the next generations down and stuff, and it's one of those things I try to get out there and pay attention to, because a lot of those branches were really interesting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had the privilege and opportunity of having a brief, training one-on-one, or not completely one-on-one, but very small group with Paul Vunak. Mm-hmm. I think it was, it was February 2002. It was right. I was supposed to go for 9/11. I was supposed to go for my birthday. And of course, 9/11 happened and no one was traveling anywhere.
Right. Yeah. Delayed travel a little bit.
Delayed traveling. So the earliest was, I think, I don't know, January or February 2002, in my last year of University of undergrad. And to me, that was, it was a game changer. It just, I think something just switched mentally for me, and, just something around intention and the drills were really novel, and really just brought something out in me that I guess all my other training had not really done.
Now, was that here in California? You came to him?
Yeah, it was in, it was Orange County.
Oceanside, I think is. Well,
yes.
I'm not sure if that's where he was then.
He was in San Clemente.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
San Clemente. So yeah, we went there, and again with my ninjutsu instructor, it was the two of us, and I think we had a weekend with Vu, and then I graduated in 2002 in May, And I organized to do an internship at UCLA,
Oh, wow.
which was not what I thought it was going to be. And so I ended up I just redirected all my energy to going to the academy. And so I trained 40 hours for 4 months every month.
Wow. Oh, wow.
I did pretty much almost every class except the Shuto.
This was what year? 2000?
2002. So that was when
It was Manchester School.
That is right. That is right. And it was also when Mark Denny had a class on Saturday. So
Okay.
I was introduced to the Dog Brothers method through that. And I do remember, I think, so Tanya Paulson was my training partner in class. Bless her. I loved her. She was always someone I looked up to. And now she's married to Eric Paulson.
Right.
And I remember he came and did a little seminar, and I went to that seminar, and oh gosh, I don't even think I feel like I just had no idea what was going on.
No,
but it was fun.
I get when I'm around Eric too, but that's okay.
Yeah, it was great. It was the Valley Tudo. It was kind of a Valley Tudo seminar. And I didn't see Guru much because he was away every weekend, really. So most of my training was taught by oh dear. My brain's having a brain spasm here. It's having a block.
It was a good block of instructors at that time period. So
there was, oh gosh.
Was John Spazano?
Suzanne, Guru Suzanne?
Yeah.
Her husband, what was his name?
John Spazano.
Yes, John. Okay, he was the guy. I think I did most of the classes. I seem to remember he was a predominant instructor. Certainly when Guru was away on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was 21, Tim. And
shows your academy instead, right?
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. Please click the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell. Also consider subscribing to the full-length podcast at www.patreon.com/malmag or purchasing individual full-length episodes at malmag.gumroad.com. Thank you for listening to this episode with Ann Conklin. Coming up next week, we have yet another Canadian, a scientist by the name of Natasha Lapore. Check out the Malmag store at www.martialartslifestylemagazine.com and click on the store tab. There, you will find a full selection of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabi Krabong, as well as Timmy B's and Dos Manos t-shirts. Many more products coming soon. Also click on our courses tab to purchase online courses, right now featuring a course in the Dos Manos stick of FMA. More courses to come. This show is produced by Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine. Visit us at www.martialartslifestylemagazine.com and enjoy the free version of our online magazine with articles, a recommended schools page, and a worldwide events calendar. Music by Jackal Relic. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.